Hi, Gitte.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. We're here for the Aware Parent series by Solkatha. I'm Karishma, the founder of Solkatha, and we're here to welcome you all caretakers, grandparents, parents, educators, nannies, anyone who loves children. We want to talk to you about conscious parenting, gentle parenting, respectful parenting, about really understanding what your child needs and what you need to make this relationship the beautiful one that you desire, because otherwise you wouldn't really be watching this. The topic for today is make meal times matter. And I have Gitte on here because I fell in love with everything she says. It's so intuitive, it's beautiful, and it's something that most of us don't practice. Meal times for us are these triggers, and she's sort of unwrapped all that for us. She is a psychologist from Norway. They moved to America 3 years ago, her whole family, and then suddenly realized that, hey, what's going on here? People eat differently. People understand, and their relationship with food is completely different. And she wanted to change that. She wanted to make the dining table a central part of our homes again. And that's what she does with Real Food Hero. So, Gitte, why do meal times matter?
Well, hi, and thank you so much for that sweet introduction. I just want to correct a tiny detail, though. I am from Denmark and not from Norway, but I know people mess that up all the time, so it doesn't matter. Just wanted to say that it's all fine.
I was
Well,
going to ask you that. And then I said, because it's called, you say, Nordic family table,
that's right. Yes, exactly.
but it's
It is
all
called Nordic family
tradition.
table. I know exactly. But Nordic is actually it's a category for all the Nordic countries. So Denmark is one of them, Norway is one of the others, Sweden, and some other countries too. So it's part of the Nordic countries.
Yes. Something
Yes.
that I know but constantly overlook, much like the topic we're going to discuss, right?
Yeah,
We,
exactly.
we know it, but we sort of, so my apologies. Gitte is
Totally
from
fine.
Denmark and she's now living in America. And I really want to hear more about, what is these Danish traditions and why is it different from how the rest of the world does it?
Well, yeah, that's a really interesting question because I didn't know that we were that different from other countries in the world until we moved to America like 3 years ago. And my husband and I and our three girls, we moved in the middle of the winter to New York, and we started integrating ourselves and speaking to people over there. And what happened was that we really quickly realized that the American food culture is just very, very different from what we had been used to and what, the way that we were raised ourselves. And mainly in the way that the dinner table was actually, it was not an integral part of their everyday lives in a way. A lot of them didn't even have a dinner table, which was very, very surprising to us because we were like, okay, so the dinner table to us is something that's just, it's a social anchor of the family. It's the heart and soul of a family, really. And we sit there in Denmark, we sit there like every day from 6 to 7. Everybody knows not to call anybody between 6 and 7 because that is where people sit down together. It's sacred that time of day. And coming to America, we were like, okay, this is clearly not the case here. People were standing and mingling or sitting in the couch or bed, watching TV while they were eating. People didn't even eat the same thing. They would just grab something, put it in the microwave, and just eat staggered and by themselves. And we were like, this is huge. This is such a huge discovery. So we were like, okay, we need to understand this. This was so surprising to us. And when we started digging into it, we also realized that it's, of course, part of the American culture of convenience and busyness because they work, they have long work hours, longer than we have in Denmark. But so it's hard to like kind of squeeze in that quality family time every day, I think, to most people. But it's also like they don't have a culture and a history for doing that. So we were like, we got to understand this. We need to understand what this is about and also maybe try to bring it back in a way to kind of revive the dinner table. That was kind of our mission.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was so stark to you, this comparison. of how mealtimes matter and how mealtimes don't matter. And what is the effect of that for the children then?
Well, it's so interesting because there are actually studies who have been looking into, so what are the effects of having regular family meals? And it turns out there are tons of studies on this, and it turns out that we can prevent a lot of things. Not only are we are happier and healthier when we eat together, and that probably has to do with, when we have this shared family meal, we tend to eat healthier, and we also tend to eat less. So we eat better, and we do that long term. It's not only when we sit at the table, but if we have been brought up with the dinner table and shared meals, we tend to have long term better, healthier eating patterns, which is good. But the other thing is that we tend to also be happier long term when having been brought up with family meals and the shared meals. So that's really interesting. But not only that, and this is where it gets really interesting, because this is kind of what you could probably assume, that you probably guess that from having that institution every day. But what's really interesting is that it actually prevents depression. It prevents eating disorders. It also delays engaging in risk behaviors like smoking and early sexual debut and stuff like that, and also aggression and a lot of other things. So it's really like there's definitely a preventative element in having these shared family meals, which I think is so interesting. And of course, I've been as a psychologist, I want to know why that is. And I think really what it is it's not about those like 20 minutes that we sit at the table every day and look at each other. It's what happens at that table. Because what I have realized is that our values, our family values, they kind of just trickle down. It's like a social and a cultural institution in a way. That's where we teach our kids manners, and we talk about what happened at school today. How about that bully? And how about what did you like at school today? What do you want to be when you grow up? Stuff like that. So it's where we have those connecting conversations with our children, and it's where we consistently, continuously also insist on knowing them and know their everyday lives and where they are and what they think about their lives and stuff like that. So I think that's really what's the key element in shared family dinners, and why they have such a positive impact on their lives.
Wow. That it's basically, you're saying it's preventative medicine, right?
Yes, exactly. Preventative natural medicine.
Yeah, amazing. Sit down with your children, eat with them, get to know them, get them
Yes.
happier and healthier, and avoid every single thing that the WHO is saying, right, about what is going to be on the rise with our generation of children. Depression,
Exactly.
mental health illness, forget sexual abuse you're talking about, right? Because you're actually discussing your day and you're connecting. So the word that
Exactly.
kept coming up to me was that connection that you're
Yeah,
creating by
exactly.
spending that time. Like, what is fascinating to me is this, you're saying that, you actually had a time in Denmark. Everyone knows, you know,
Yes.
they eat at this time, which is
Yeah.
so wonderful and like you said, sacred. But let's get down to this universal thing that everyone has, Gitte. I feel
Yes.
that, yes, so obviously the Danish custom is far superior to a lot of other countries. But in terms of how we treat our children, at the dinner table, especially younger children or possibly even teenagers sometimes, there's a sort of universal, possibly a lack of respect. Would you call it? How would you categorize that?
Like the lack of respect that we show our children, or yes. Well, I think that that's a really interesting topic, because when we started looking into all these things, my husband is a chef, and he loves to cook food from scratch. So he was obviously very interested in that part. And I'm a psychologist, so I was more interested in the dynamics around the dinner table and what happens when we sit down together, and also what we bring to the table, so to speak, like our attitudes, our beliefs, the dynamics that are just happening right there in front of us. And I think that when we look into our parenting styles, like gentle parenting and respectful parenting and all these things, I think what often happens is that a lot of parents can see that, okay, maybe this is the right way to go. It can be difficult, of course, but they might dedicate themselves to actually live up to these standards of gentle and respectful parenting. But what often happens is that when we approach the dinner table and we start to sit down, all these beautiful principles of respecting our children, they just go to the wayside. And it's like all of a sudden we step into this universe of control and pressure, bribing, threatening, distracting, enticing, just to get our kids to eat. And I think that this is so interesting because it's not that we want to be, harsh parents. We don't want to be strict, and we don't want to engage in all these manipulation strategies to get our kids to eat. But what happens is that we as parents often, perceive of the feeding our kids job as something that's just fundamental to parenting. So if we can't do that very well, so like get our kids to eat those veggies and stuff, we feel like we're failing. So often what happens is that we are struggling with that underlying belief of I need to get my kids to eat or I'm a bad mom. So what can we do about that? Well, we want to get them to eat. So I'll do whatever I can to get them to eat. And that's why we start pressuring and being really kind of disrespectful to them. And I not only mean that we control them, we pressure and force them and threaten them. I also mean that bribing and rewarding, distracting, all those more soft manipulation strategies, I think it's basically just the other side of that coin, because we're treating them as things we need to get to do something. And I think we need to step back from that. I know a lot of parents don't realize that that's what they're probably engaging in, because their intentions are just to have their kids to eat. And I totally understand that, especially if they're worried about their growth or their thriving and stuff like that. But what we need to see is the bigger picture, because if we engage in those strategies, we are unfortunately not building up a healthy relationship for our kids with food. So that's what's happening, unfortunately.
Wow. I think you've hit the nail on the head, because you said the mom feels like a failure.
Yes.
Dad feels like they're not doing their duty when they
Yes.
actually don't meet their kids' nutritional needs, because
Exactly.
that's their emotional reaction. There's
It
a
is.
high pressure environment, and the pressure is just literally like, cooking inside of every meal. And sometimes the
Right.
anxiety starts before the meal as well, right? So
It does.
you
Yes.
told us about what the parent is going through, why the mom chooses all these tactics, even though she doesn't mean it. What is the child going through?
Yes, and that's very interesting to look at it from the child's perspective. I know that when I was a kid, I was actually what you would call picky, because there were a lot of things I didn't eat, and my mom would force me to. She would force me to at least taste it, and often also finish my plate, because that was how you did it back in the 80s. And to some parents, that's still how we do it. And I just remember back then, I have it backed up, of course, from a lot of kids right now, but I just remember from myself how hard that was, because what I was experiencing sitting there facing something unfamiliar on my plate was that I was really experiencing some sort of anxiety. I was nervous about tasting this, because how would it taste? How would it feel in my mouth? And what about the texture and stuff like that? So when we are meeting something unfamiliar, we're like, okay, hold on just a second. I'm just going to see, what this is and find out if I really want to eat this. And if we have some parents standing over us and supervising our every bite and pressuring us to eat, what happens is that, or trying to manipulate us to eat it, what happens is that our anxiety is not lowered at all. It's not, it's not going away because they tell us to eat it. So, and if we are pressured to eat it still, even though we are anxious and nervous about it, what happens is that, well, we might do it and we might just swallow it, and we might, we get to that end point for the parent of eating it. But the problem is that we're going to have a bad experience with eating, and with that food also in particular. So say it was broccoli that I didn't like. Well, actually, let's take fish, because I hated fish when I was a kid. And I had so many bad experiences with eating fish. So it actually took me like from when I was 12, and I think I tasted it the last time, I did not eat fish for 10 years until I was about 22 again. And that was because there was so much emotion, so many bad food memories associated to this, particular kind of food. And I just felt that, even the smell of fish was just terrible for me, because not that I, consciously thought about all the pressure and stuff. For me, it just gave me bad associations. So that's often what happens to kids when we try to pressure our way through with them and make them eat stuff that they don't want to eat. And also, we might make them eat it. As I said, we might bribe our way through it, or we threaten our way through it, and they eat it. But the problem is that will be only because you told them so to do it. It wouldn't be because they wanted to. So if we really want to raise intuitive and healthy eaters, what we want to do is to install some kind of, or nurture the intrinsic motivation that all kids have to learn. And that doesn't matter if it's eating or reading or math or playing baseball or whatever. It doesn't really matter. We need to rely on the intrinsic motivation instead of the extrinsic motivation. And that's what's really important here, especially if you want to raise these happy, healthy little eaters.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Gitte, because I think that for everyone listening, they can actually really connect with that. You know, the anticipation of knowing that the fish is getting cooked, the smell wafting through the house, and the fact that you know that you have to finish your plate. I think many
Yes.
of us went through that as children, you know,
Yeah.
and we probably think we're so lenient now when,
Yes, exactly.
we don't possibly instill that on in our kids, and we give them more choice. But often it's, we could probably do better, and that's why we're having these conversations, right? Because there is still shame, there is still pressure, and our child still feels anxiety as they approach the dinner table. And very
Mhm.
often the question is, what are we having today?
Exactly. And sometimes they will even say, when we say what we're having, they will say, I don't like it, without even ever having tasted it before, having seen it or whatever. And that's exactly because we have surrounded our meal times with a lot of pressure and a lot of forcing and a lot of control and supervision. So I think that even before getting to the dinner table and going to sit at, when they go to sit at the table, they already feel that kind of pressure. And as you said, so what are the approaches? We obviously better probably than we were in the 1960s on a lot of parental issues. But mealtimes keep being this, topic that we still struggle with finding our way in. And I think it's mainly because a lot of parents think that there are like these two options. Either our kids control everything. We make them kid-friendly food. We do short order cooking. We just obey whatever they say they want to eat, or they graze all day, or they snack all day, or whatever. So basically, they are in 100% control of what they eat. Or we think that the other option could be that we are in 100% control of what they eat. So we make them eat it. We make them finish their plate. We make them try what they don't want to try, and all that. So facing these two paths here will, I'm afraid to say, it's not going to really lead to raising intuitive and healthy little eaters who are curious about food. But the problem is a lot of parents don't see that there are any other options because they don't have the tools for it. And the thing is that we can actually approach this very, very differently if we just, step back from controlling and all that, because there are so many tools that are gentle and respectful to kids that we can use instead. Like just exposure is one of them. Keep exposing our kids to the food that they might not be, ready to try yet. And that shouldn't tell us that, okay, I can't serve this food ever again because they obviously don't like it. That should just tell us, okay, I'm basically advertising for food right now. I'm basically just showing them that this is food, and they will get familiar with it. So in the end, they're gonna be more ready to eat it. And there are tons of other tools too. So I think that a lot of parents just don't see that because there's not a lot of focus on that in our, parent books and parent guidings and stuff like that. So I think we need to start seeing that there are actually alternatives to those two approaches that I just described.
Okay, so there's two ends of the spectrum, and then there's people who are trying to find the dance between something in the middle. And I think
Yes.
for most people who are listening, they're actually curious about how this is, because every parent struggles with this, right? Mom is like,
Yeah.
okay, how do I meet my child's nutritional needs? How important is that?
Mhm.
And how can I, sort of couple that with being sort of lenient enough and respectful enough to my
Yes.
child? How can I meet both those needs?
Yes. And that's a really interesting question, because I think that really lies at the root of what many parents are scared of, that my child is not getting the nutritional foods that he needs, and he's probably just snacking or grazing on this and that, and he's only eating pasta, so he might not get the protein and stuff like that. So obviously that's a concern for a lot of parents. And I want to say, I am a psychologist and I'm not, a dietitian or a nutritionist or anything. And I actually don't know a lot about these things. I know some, but it's not my field. So I'm not going to go into that and pretend I'm an expert there, because I'm not. But what I want to say about that is that our children are actually intuitive eaters, mostly until they're 2 or 3 years old.
Mhm.
And so they actually just, imagine or picture this little infant that are breastfeeding, right? They will know when to let go and say, hey, I'm done. And we also often respect that when they're little. But at some point, when we get to the age of 2 and 3, we stop respecting it. And what happens there is often because our children get into this phase of natural pickiness. That's an evolutionary thing that's probably that's probably resulting from back in the days, like millions of years ago, when we were on the savannah and we were at the age of 2 or 3 would start picking up foods from the ground. So that's kind of how evolution has made us more conscious about not doing that and installing this sort of pickiness, or at least this skepticism towards new foods, which is good. So it's not a bad thing to actually have this awakening when you're 2 or 3 years old. And it's usually when it shows up. But so it's not bad in itself. We're still intuitive eaters. But what happens is our reaction to that is actually what messes this up. So when we start being overly cautious and tense and anxious about these things, and when we start pressuring our kids to eat and stuff like that, that's when the intuitiveness sort of fades away, and our children are starting to comply to our strategies of getting them to eat. And that's exactly how we are turning our kids into someone who is not an intuitive eater, and who will rely on those external factors for knowing when to eat. So really what we need to do as parents is to trust our kids with knowing, their bodies actually are really, really good at knowing what they need. So if we can get back to putting the responsibility back with our children and telling them how important it is to listen to their own body, then we have come a long way. Because doing that, attending to, am I really hungry now? Do I need to finish this plate? Well, actually, I feel kind of full, so I might just leave the rest of it on my plate. Or even just, a thing that's very much up that people talk a lot about right now is sweets and desserts and stuff like that. If we keep labeling desserts as, this is fantastic, it's also bad food because it's so sinful and stuff, but it's fantastic, it just has this good taste and all that, then what we're doing is pulling back from being an intuitive eater and just telling our kids, this is good, and all the other foods that you eat in order to get that sweet food or whatever is bad. So doing that is actually withdrawing from the goal that we are trying to reach.
Okay, so you've said a lot there.
I
So,
did, yeah.
yeah. So for parents struggling, first of all, good news.
Mm-hmm.
It's for all the parents who went through this of, oh my God, my child is not eating, my child is not eating. It was
Yes.
evolution, so feel okay about that. Step
Yes.
back is what I'm hearing. Step back, because your child's body knows
Yes.
to intuitively eat, because that innate intelligence exists within them. And you don't have
Exactly.
to keep second guessing, because when you have a sick day or you don't feel like eating, your child has those too. And you can begin to start trusting your child,
Yes.
their innate
Yes.
intelligence, and then trust yourself.
Yes.
Not being bad. You don't have to
Exactly.
reward them with every meal, because this is what happens, I think, Gitte, between parent and child. You know, we have these triggers of how we were raised. I know I definitely have them. Oh my God, I was raised like this, and I was, I have to eat a certain way. And my
Yeah.
meal times are the worst, have been the biggest learning curve for me with my children, because I
Yes.
get triggered so easily. They know I get triggered, they get triggered, and meal times can sometimes just explode, you
Yeah.
know, into something that wasn't. And, we talked about this thing about having this expectation, right? You want this to be a good moment, right? You prepared all of this so everyone has a good time, and it ends up
Yes.
something else. So, what is this perfection that we associate with meals? Why is it that there's so much need to sort of say, you know what, it's like almost like a TV serial you want to see, right? That picture perfect moment of me and my family dining, and no one's whining and crying and complaining or negotiating, right?
Yeah, that's true. And that is so interesting because I think a lot of the tension also comes from our high expectations to that shared meal and our family dinners. Because for many people, that's the time of day that they actually see their children. That's maybe the only time of day where they have this half an hour together. And we want that to be good and connecting and just in a nice ambience, and we can just sit there. So when they start throwing food or saying, I don't want that, or they start screaming, or they start just rejecting or the food or whatever, we're like, no, 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 this just not, it doesn't fit into this perfect picture of how I wanted this meal to be. And I think when we can start looking at just this morning, I just want to, tell you what happened this morning, because that's exactly what happened. It wasn't dinner, of course, it was breakfast. But my 4-year-old, she came out and she was like, yeah, you know what? I don't want what we usually have. We usually have oatmeal for morning, for breakfast. And she said, I want scrambled eggs instead. And I was like, yeah, that's not what's on the menu today, because I knew in my head, this is going to take way too long and it's going to be, she won't probably eat it after all. So I was like, yeah, that's not what's on the menu. How about we do it on Saturday? And she was like, oh, no, 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 no. She would start crying, and she would literally be on the floor crying and screaming. And I remember looking at my husband. He was just like, here we go again. And in that moment, I think it's just so important. Even though I had a hard time doing it too, I was like, oh, this is so annoying. And we could barely hear anything. She was screaming so loud. She was lying there, and I was like, okay, I need to handle this with all the calmness that I can muster up right now. So I did that. I kept to what I had said. I kept the boundary. I was like, you know what? It's not on the menu today. I know you want to have it, and I understand how frustrating that is. But I want to serve you whatever's on the table here. Do you want to sit with me? And she was like, no. And, being super angry about it, super frustrated. In the end, she came to me, sat on me, and she wanted what we had on the table. So she actually ended up eating these things. And of course, you could look at that as, oh my God, you're messing up my perfect image of dinner or breakfast or whatever. But really, what happened here, when I look back at it now, I think was actually a moment of connection. That was sort of a moment for me to connect with my daughter. She had a hard time because she really wanted those eggs. She couldn't have them, so she was naturally frustrated. But what happened was that I could actually meet her, and I could sort of contain what she was feeling. I could say, okay, I understand. And she could sit with me. She could scream it all out. And we ended up sitting there together. And she was like, she relaxed and she ate her breakfast. So I feel like, our high expectations of that perfect picture of sitting there together and just looking and talking and connecting and all that, we need to also, we need to kind of nuance that a little bit to also being, this is family too. This is also what a family is. A family that's not always, sometimes the kids are screaming or sometimes they're yelling or not doing as we want them to do, but that's also family, and that's also connection. I don't know if that answered the question, but
That's beautiful to hear, Gitte, because I think that people have this perception that, oh, because you're a therapist and because you are talking to other people about how mealtimes, can
yes,
change life, can be preventive medicine, can be beautiful, respectful, and gentle. Your home must be perfect. Like your child
yes,
must walk up to the dining table and sit down and be like eating whatever they eat, and it happens every single day. But
yes,
I want to tell everyone that we're all struggling, you know, and we're
agree.
all trying our best in the moment, and there's no judgment here. And there's
No,
only empathy for every single one of you, including you, Getty. I mean, I'm with you there. You know,
yes,
uh, my daughter hasn't eaten lunch for 2 days because she decided that she doesn't want it, right?
yes, exactly. Right. And that is just, little bumps along the way, but it's actually also more than that. It's even, a moment with the opportunity to connect with your kids and to understand them. And if we manage to do that, we're actually paving the way for them to become good eaters and to become more attuned to their inner cues. But feeding kids, it is just tricky. It is for me too. It is for everybody, I think. It's just tricky. And we shouldn't fool ourselves to say, well, it's not really tricky. It's actually pretty easy. We can just do this and that. There are no quick fixes. But and it's, it's a long journey and it's a process, and I'm still learning too, because sometimes I want to just tell her, hey, you can't have that, and I want you to have this instead or whatever. But I'm still learning too. And I think as long as we meet them where they are and we start respecting their boundaries, still standing, firm on ours, gentle but firm on ours, I think, we are creating that opportunity for them to not only have a better relationship with us, but also have a better relationship with food.
Yeah, and also you're so right about saying it's a moment of connection where you're creating this connection, right? When our child is going through, we don't know what they're going through. We don't know what she woke up with, what thought she woke up with when she got out of bed that morning. And what sensations in her body wanted those scrambled eggs, and not, and really didn't want them, like you said. She just wanted to say she wanted them, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So, um, and then you have that moment of connection. What else on the long run, when people practice this day to day? Obviously, there's no perfection about this. What are the positive effects you see? What are the positive impact? Can you share another story of someone you're working with, perhaps?
Yes, because I have this online course that I'm selling that's called Real Food Hero in 4 weeks. And I've heard back from some of the clients that had taken this course, and I've been in close contact with them on, during their journey. And what they said was that initially, when they wanted to, when they bought the course, they were like, yeah, okay, so we obviously have this problem of a picky eater who's not eating what we want them to eat and who's always rejecting food, and, all those mealtime struggles that we all know so very well. But what they said was that, in the end, it was more about, for them, what they kind of learned from the course was not only how to handle it and to step back, but it was also like, for them, they realized how important that institution of the dinner table really is, and how much this was really a window of opportunity for them to connect with their children. And and I remember one of them saying, when they had, put candles on the table, and they had just made sure that the dinner table looked really nice and appetizing in a way, not only the food, but also how we put the plates on, and the glasses and the napkins and the candles and stuff like that. And one of her kids said to her, "Mom, this is so nice." And they were just sitting there, and I don't even remember if they all finished their plates or whatever. They probably didn't. I hope they didn't, if they didn't need to. But she was just very surprised by how much power it has to actually dedicate yourself to have those family meals and to sit down together and just be in that moment together, whatever that moment is, even if it's children having a hard time, or children not, agreeing with whatever you're saying, or not eating their food or whatever. It's a family moment. That's really, that's really important.
That's wonderful. So basically, they come in thinking that, oh my God, I'm going to turn my picky eater into someone who actually eats, or they're really struggling with it. And what they
Yes.
find is that in the long run, they're probably healthier, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because you're giving in to this pickiness, and you're giving options, and you're making allowances for your child to simply be themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that we also have some studies who are basically saying that when we have a pleasant mealtime environment, that's when we see less picky kids. And it all makes sense to me, because I'm like, who can eat and who can be persuaded into eating their veggies in a bad mealtime environment where people are constantly pressuring you, commenting on your intake, or saying, oh my God, you're only eating that today? Can you please also have some meatballs or this and that? I think you should have a varied, a meal. But I think that's very much what it is about. Like, a pleasant mealtime environment will get you so far. And it's not only about having your children eat their veggies tonight, because anybody can probably do that. Even though toddlers can be very stubborn and very rejecting, anybody can probably make somebody else do something for them if the reward is big enough, or the punishment or the threat is big enough. But is that really how we want to do it? I don't think it is. And I think what we fail to see when we're, doing those manipulation strategies is that there are other ways, and that we need to rely on that intrinsic motivation instead of, external factors like bribes and threats.
So everything you've told us has been just great. Can you just tell us how we can actually put this to action? I mean, I feel like Solkatha is really about, tips and actions and hacks. So, what are the top three things you recommend that any parent who's listening in, any
Yes.
caretaker who's listening in can, implement?
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say that that's one of the things I usually tell people. You need to stop calling your child picky. And that's because, well, as I talked about the pleasant mealtime environment, calling somebody picky is labeling them. And it's a biased word that's hardly very positive. Nobody here would like to be called picky. Um, and it's demeaning and humiliating to a lot of kids. And we don't always stop to wonder about that. We don't always stop to see that. We just call them picky here and there, and we think they might not notice, but they do. And it's not only that it's demeaning and humiliating, it's also that it's giving them sort of an easy way out. It's like justifying why they're not eating their veggies. We are basically offering them a narrative of, I'm picky, so that's why I can't eat this and that. I have had so many, some of my, my daughters and their friends coming over here for dinner, and they're like, no, I can't eat that because, I'm picky. And I'm like, oh, if somebody had stopped before handing over that narrative to them, and just approached it differently and never say you're picky, then this kid might actually have had the courage to start digging into whatever we were serving.
Mm.
So I think that is one of the things that I start telling parents of picky children: don't call your kids picky. And also there could be so many for reasons for our kids to reject food in the first place. They could be tired or overwhelmed, or they can't they don't can't see their way through that plate. And it can be about so many things other than being picky. So that's the first thing I want to say: quit the label picky. That's just a good start. And the other thing I want to say is we need to stop commenting on their food intake. We have there's a woman called Ellen Satter, and she has put forward this great theory of the division of responsibility at the table. So what she's saying is, you as a parent are in charge of the serving factors. The child is in charge of the eating factors. So she's saying, okay, you decide, you're in charge of what is served. You are in charge of when it is served and where it's served. So these three things are what you as a parent can do. Once you've done that, your job is done. On the other hand, your child will decide what to eat from the table. Not what to eat, in general. I can just pick this and that, and I can go to the pantry and see what we got. But you can decide what to eat from the table and how much to eat, and even more controversially, if to eat at all. And we need to respect that, because once we have done our jobs of serving the food, we need to step back and let the rest be up to our kids. So I really think that, and that also means that we should stop commenting and stop pressuring, stop bribing and doing all that. Just step out of it. Stop commenting on it. So that was number two. And the third one is, as I've been saying it a few times too, like, stop the rewarding and bribing and whatever else you're doing to make your kids eat. Because again, if we rely on the rule from that I just mentioned, like the division of responsibility, what's so important is that we are actually stepping back from wanting our kids to eat something, that stepping back from having an agenda on their behalf. We need to step back from that. So, and that also means like no saying, oh, so if you eat your broccoli, if you finish your plate, you can have dessert, or something like that. That's a classic among most parents. So if you eat a little bit more, just two more bites, then you can have dessert or ice cream or whatever. We need to stop doing that, because if we are to give them the responsibility for their eating, it's not up to us to say, hey, if you do a little bit more, then you can have this. We need to step back from that.
So don't label your child. You're a
Exactly.
great eater, you're a not so great eater, oh, she never has that, oh, he's so fussy. Stop
Yes.
with the labeling. Don't give them a narrative, don't give them those options, to just, say like, oh, I don't like that because my mom said, you know,
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
I'm never going to try that. So don't give them that option. I really love the division of labor. I love that I have the control to serve my child, and my child can accept it or not. It's as simple
Exactly.
as that, right? And you spoke
Yes.
earlier about the spectrum of full control and no control. And this is a
Yes.
beautiful thing of partnership control,
It
right?
is.
My child has some control, the child feels empowered, the child feels respected, and
Yes.
the parent also feels in control, right?
Yes.
And in acceptance of I can do, but I cannot force. It's like bringing the horse to the water, but the horse can choose to drink or not, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. And then the third thing you said was don't brag, don't negotiate, don't do that because you're actually belittling your relationship with your child by doing that. You're belittling
Yes.
their relationship to food. And,
Yes.
we're actually taking something really pure and beautiful and we're watching it down with all of this, you
We
know.
are. And
Yeah.
not only that, can I just say a little bit more about the rewarding? Because this is really it's a great passion of mine to dig into, why rewards are not working. And that's not only with food, it's also with reading and doing math and doing a lot of other things. But the problem with rewarding and bribing is that we're actually undermining their intrinsic motivation and their reasons for doing it in the first place. But we are also telling them when we're saying, you will get this if you just do that. So when we do that, it will become so much better than it was initially, and the that will become so much worse than it was initially. So imagine if you tell your child, so eat your peas and then you can have dessert. Even if the peas were, before saying that, the peas maybe have been neutral to the child, but after saying that, the peas will have a different meaning to the child. They will be not at all neutral. They will be a bitter chore that they have to get through in order for them to get what's really delicious, and even more delicious they might have perceived the ice cream before saying this. So we are also we are in a worse place than we were if we didn't say it. So
So
bribes and rewards are really just undermining, the goal that we want to get to.
I totally agree with you. I totally
Yeah.
agree because this relationship between the two,
Yes.
it is something that the child starts to equate these things with. But in a
Yes.
generation raised on junk food and
Yes.
craving it all the time, the next salty chip, that next hit of sugar, right? How do you help, children like that? How do parents negotiate this junk food with good food?
Yes. Well, I think it's all about, again, labeling and stepping back from labeling foods as good or bad. We can start talking about what kind of role that food has and what kind of how it can help us, because food is of course it's fuel. It's much more than that, of course, but it can help us. So when we hand out chips, for instance, or if they want a lollipop or something like that, it might be a good idea to say, well, it's not a bad food. We don't want to say that, but what we want to say instead is to get them to understand that these foods are not really filling foods, so it's not really gonna make you, stronger for that baseball game you have in half an hour, or it's not gonna make you last until lunch where you will have, food next time. So, and they will also fill up your stomach in a way, so it's not, you will feel like you got something, but it won't really be filling foods. So we need to start, instead of talking about good or bad and put a moral judgment on food, we need to step back from doing that and start talking about the role of these things. And also, I want to say that kids can't eat the food that you don't give them. So again, if you don't want them to eat junk food, and if you don't want them to eat lollipops or ice creams all the time, well, then just don't have it in your house, or make it, so they can't see it. So it shouldn't be accessible, or something that they can actually see that's in the pantry if you don't want them to eat it. So if you make, real and fresh food accessible to them, then that's exactly what they're going to eat.
So simple.
Yes.
Yeah,
It sounds simple, and I know it's hard because sometimes we want it ourselves, or we want it for next week when we know we have something going on that we need those snacks for, or whatever. But I think it's really very much about making a conscious decision about how much do I want my kids to have of these things like sweets and chips and greasy food and all that. And how, because if I don't want them to have it that much, then we should stop buying it. Or we can make rules about, maybe at our house, for instance, we have Friday candy, which is a tradition in Denmark, where we come from. So every child in Denmark will know what Friday candy is, and it's such an institution, to a point where even the supermarket, they have aisles for Friday candy. So what happens is that every child goes to the supermarket or the little store on Fridays, and they mix their own little bag of Friday candy. And then when coming home that night after dinner, everybody in the family, this is of course, a little bit of it's maybe a little characterized, but what they do is to sit together in the couch, and they just maybe mom and dad are drinking a glass of red wine or watching a show together. So we're really indulging in those Friday candies together, and we're making a thing out of it and a social thing out of it. So it's not like you just shovel those Friday candies in and just mindlessly gobbling up whatever's available. So that's one way of doing it. Some dietitians these days are talking about neutralizing the power of sweets by putting a gummy bear on your plate every day or something like that. That's also an option. I just want to say that I think we should also be careful not to normalize the sweets too much, because to me, personally, I don't want my kids to think that they should have candy every day. So it's always a balance, but I think it's really important that parents make a conscious decision about how much do I want my kids to have from this, and then adjust what's accessible after that.
Yes. So, what is stocked in your refrigerator, in your pantry, on your snack table represents
Yeah.
your diet, represents your child's diet. So, please be
Yeah.
mindful of that. And then,
Yes.
when you do eat the food, invite your children to see the effect of that food. Like you're going to have
Yes.
a piece of chocolate cake. How long do you feel hungry for, after that? How does
Exactly.
your mood change? Does it satiate you for a long time, or does it make you feel like, oh, I want more of that, otherwise I'll get cranky, right?
Exactly.
It's
Yes.
relationship, building that relationship of effect and, of how that happens. And then,
Exactly. And I think that's so important, because what you're touching on right now is also becoming familiar with taking that responsibility yourself. Just recently, my family and I, we went to this Easter thing, belated Easter arrangement. And it was, there were a lot of foods, and there were also like sweet foods and more like not so healthy foods. And I had such a good time. So I was sitting there with my friends, and my kids they would have access to the good food and also to, the desserts and all that at the same time. And I didn't pay much attention to it. And I also was like, they need to make their own choices here without me supervising it. So I actually completely let go. But when we came home, my 7-year-old, she came and said to me, Mom, maybe you're not going to like this. You know what happened? I actually didn't eat lunch or dinner today because I just had I ate the popsicles, and I had some sodas, and I ate some chips or whatever was available. I don't even remember anymore. But she basically didn't have any filling foods. And, my first response was like, what? And I wanted to say, oh, that is really, how could you do that? How could you? But I stepped back from it. I was like, oh, wow, really? So how do you feel right now? And she said, Mom, my stomach kind of hurts. So maybe that's because I kind of feel hungry, but then I feel full still. So I don't really feel good. She said it perfectly. And I just remember thinking, this is the perfect learning situation for her, because she, at that day, she actually tried making her own food mistakes. She went, indulging and gobbling up all that sweet foods, and she forgot about the filling foods and the real food. And I think that was just such a moment of, she would just realize at that moment how that is probably not a good idea. I didn't shame her for it. I didn't say, well, next time I better, be in charge of what you're eating. You can't eat any of those before, you've asked me or anything. So I think she learned her lesson perfectly. And I love that.
she did it herself. Yeah.
Yes.
That moment of being able to step back, right? And nothing like experience. Well done, Gitte.
Yeah, well, what I was so close to, I was so close to saying all the things that I would normally have done if I hadn't known all these things. I was so close to doing that. It was like an intuition in a way. But then I was like, I stopped myself. I was like, yeah, okay, so this is actually the perfect situation, the perfect moment to teach her about these things.
Everyone who's listening in, I want you to access Gitte. So I'm going to put her Instagram details below. I'm going to put her website details. Her course is brilliant. As you can hear, you can see all the positive things coming up. I invite you to think about, why mealtimes matter. And before we let you go, Gitte, any
Yes.
final thoughts? Anything you want to share with people who are listening?
Well, I want to say that what I'm doing and all the suggestions I have, I don't want to shame anybody, because I think the most important thing we can do here is to to go and seek out the knowledge that we want about these things, because we've all got it wrong at some point in our lives, and we will all make mistakes. And this is a long journey and a process of, teaching our kids. Yes, exactly. And me too. I mean, it's still something I'm learning. So we shouldn't be ashamed of how we have done things up until this point. If we want change, it's going to be, slow change and the process, and we're going to learn. It's really about the mindset. So that's really what I want to say, that we shouldn't feel guilty or ashamed, and we didn't, ruin our kids by having done these things up until now. We didn't at all. There's still time to change things. So that's basically just my message that I think is very important to moms and dads out there.
I think that's the most thing. I completely agree with you, because that's the most important message. This is not about saying, hey, you got it wrong, because we're still learning. And there's
Yes,
always time for improvement, because as parents, as caregivers, we always want the best for our children, right?
exactly.
We always have the best of intentions. It's just that we didn't know any better. We didn't have a different model. And that's why we're talking to you. We're trying to figure out what is the better model. How can
Yes,
we make meal times matter? How can we get our children less depressed, more healthy, create those connected moments, and have a real pure relationship with food? Not what
yes,
my mom thinks I should have or what my granddad thought would be good for
exactly.
me, but what I want to eat because I enjoy that
Yes,
curry or that fry or that chocolate, right?
yes, exactly.
And can I enjoy in that moment and take that, and ritualize it for whatever it is, like that you're saying, have that candy on the Friday, and on
Yes,
Wednesday, I know I have to eat my beans. So,
yeah,
because that's what is going to serve my body, and for the child to know that, it's just
mhm,
so interesting and so encouraging, I think, to a lot of people who are listening, Yeti, to have this model of participation, to have a presence in at the dining table, and to really form moments of connection through meal times. Thank you so
exactly.
much, Yeti. Thank you. It's
For
been
giving me the opportunity. It was great talking to you.
take good care, Giddy. And at Solkata, we always say shine brighter with Solkata.